Amen. At the end of the service, all the soldiers that stood, the veterans, I want y'all to, right about the last prayer, I want y'all to filter out into the foyer and make two lines and let folks come through and thank you for your service as they go out. So don't forget to do that. If I forget to tell you, telling you now, please do that for us because we want to honor you, and I will try not to forget that as well. But today we are honoring all who serve, the American veterans, and really celebrating Veterans Day. And Veterans Day is an official United States public holiday and usually observed annually on November the 11th that honors military veterans, that is, persons who served in the United States Armed Forces. It coincides with different holidays, including Armistice and Remembrance Day, celebrated in other countries that mark the anniversary and end of World War I. Major hostilities of World War I were formally ended on the 11th hour, 11th day of the 11th month of 1918. That's where it really originated, on the 11th. The United States previously served Armistice Day, and the U.S. holiday was renamed Veterans Day in 1954. So it's been around a long time. My whole lifetime basically has been here and calling it Veterans Day. On November the 11th, 1919, U.S. President Woodrow Wilson issued a message to his countrymen on the first Armistice Day in which he expressed what he felt the day meant to Americans. Here's what he said. The White House, November the 11th, 1919, a year ago today, our enemies laid down their arms in accordance with an armistice which rendered them impotent to renewed hostilities and gave the world an assured opportunity to reconstruct its shattered order and to work out in peace a new and juster set of international relations. The soldiers and people of the European allies had fought and endured for more than 4 years to uphold the barrier of civilization against the aggression of the armed forces. We ourselves had been in the conflict something more than a year and a half with splendid forgetfulness of the mere personal concerns. We're modeled our industries, concentrated our resources, increased our agricultural output, and assembled a great army so that our power was a decisive factor in the victory. And he goes on to mention that and why they established Veterans Day. And I'm glad we haven't had great world wars since World War I and World War II. We've had skirmishes and wars, but nothing as big as those were. So aren't you glad? And I pray right now that our powers that be don't get us in another one, because they're saying right now that we're on the verge of World War III, and I pray that's not the case. So you pray along with me. In Isaiah chapter 6, here's what God said. Isaiah said, also I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then said I, here am I, send me. Now, of course, he was going into the Lord's battle, wasn't he, and becoming a prophet for the Lord. But there are times when our nation calls on our people to step up and go. And I thank God for the veterans that stood during those songs. Aren't you glad for them? In fact, they stood and went when they were called upon. Let's give them a hand one more time, please. When anything important happens in our world, there are usually humans involved. And God ordained it that way. And I'm not sure why God made us the world policeman and why he made us like we are, but I know this, America, sometimes I wonder why did we get in that particular conflict, and we don't know everything behind the scenes of what's going on, but I know this, there have been just wars. And I believe World War I and World War II were just wars. And I believe the motivation behind fighting in Korea and the motivation behind fighting in Vietnam were just causes, because we were trying to stem the flow and stem the tide of communism. And then, of course, trying to turn back the forces of Islam in the Middle East. I think those were just ideas and just causes that we sent our boys to fight for. I remember in my day, the draft was still in effect. How many, you probably don't, a lot of you don't know what the draft was, do you? You're too young to remember, but in our day, before it was a volunteer army, they had a big draft that they would draw numbers out of they would take all the birthdays and they would divide them into numbers. And my number was 266. That's a high number, isn't it? But they would roll the barrel and they would draw numbers out of the barrel, and everybody with that particular number based upon their birthday, they would be drafted. And I didn't get drafted. I was in high school at the time, and I was in ROTC, and Army ROTC in high school, but I was not drafted. And by the time that I graduated, Vietnam was starting to wind down. They didn't really want more soldiers to come in because they had many soldiers coming home, so they didn't need us. So I didn't go. And I had a heart murmur anyway, so they probably would have rejected me when I got there. But I was excited about it. I kind of wanted to go. And then, of course, it wound down, and thank God for that. And we lost 58,000 plus young men in Southeast Asia. And we love and remember them. Had some friends from Gulf Hammock area that lost their lives over there in the rice paddies of Vietnam. So we remember them as well today on Veterans Day, that there were those that never came home, and thank God for them. But Isaiah said to the Lord, "Here am I, send me," and our soldiers did the same thing. "Here am I, send me," and thank God for you guys. I'm telling you, y'all are a cut above the average person, because really think about the choice that these brave Americans made. Each of the veterans that we have made a choice to serve in the military. They weren't forced to. They made a choice to do that, and they put their lives on the line. And it's really not for the faint of heart. I like the book that Tom Brokaw wrote, the Greatest American Generation. If you haven't gotten that book, I would say buy the book. I've got one on my shelf in the library there, and I alliterate and quote from it quite often. But I really do believe that particularly the World War II and early Korean War and that generation really, I think, were the greatest American generation. And I forgot who it was yesterday, we were talking about this, and we were talking about how tough those men, I think it was James Lofton, that was a tough generation. And those guys they were men among men. Not that the soldiers these days aren't, but you're talking about some rough, tough individuals to go over and fight through Europe and then the Pacific, and a lot of hand-to-hand combat, a lot of hard warfare back during those days. And I thank God for those men that were representing our nation and helping preserve the freedoms that we have. They made a choice to do that. And each of our veterans can rest assured that those of us that stayed home greatly appreciate their service. We are a grateful nation. Thank you so much for serving. And each of our veterans can be proud they protected our country, and their families for having served in the military. And I like this statement, besides my brothers and my sisters, I will proudly take a stand. When liberty's in jeopardy, I'll always do what's right. I'm out here on the front lines. Sleep in peace tonight. American soldier, I'm an American soldier. They're on duty, aren't they? When we're home sleeping, they're protecting. And, I think about I had some friends that served in the submarine service. Did you realize we have submarines? They've been in the water now since half our lifetime, basically. And, of course, they run new crews and new subs and that sort of thing, but they've been patrolling the waters of the world underwater for months on end with nuclear missiles just in case. Aren't you glad the just in case never happened? And yet those guys were away from home all that time. Like the other soldiers, the land-based soldiers, they were on guard and on duty, and thank God for them. They were our first line of defense and kept the enemy at bay. Each of our veterans can be proud that they're part of a select fraternity. Only those that served are part of this great group. You have a T-shirt that we don't have if you served in the military, and we tip our hat to you. And many of them, paid a great price. You paid a price. Those of you that didn't get wounded or maimed or killed, you still paid a great price by having been away from your family all that length of time. Each of them had lives at home that they had to leave and go serve wherever they had to be. Each of them gave up certain things to do their part, because once you sign the line with Uncle Sam, you belong to him, right? You're his property, and he can do whatever he wants to with you. And many of them did not come back as they left America. And so we need to make sure that we always honor our veterans and those that served. Particularly, I'm more tied to this generation, the Vietnam generation, because I was in high school, coming out of high school, ROTC, about the time it was ending. And I remember vividly when I would wear my ROTC uniform, there was what was called the Black Arm people, the Black Armband people in those days. They hated the war, they hated soldiers, and they would spit on our soldiers coming home and scream and yell obscenities, kind of like what BLM does today with policemen and authorities. They did the same thing back then. And to me, they're the same kind of people. That they hate America, they hate the authorities that are in America, they hate police, they hate the soldiers. And in that day, the poor soldiers coming back from Vietnam didn't understand when they came home why people were screaming and yelling and cursing them and spitting on them. And they did that to us at high school. Some of the people in our high school would do that to us as we would wear our uniforms. On a certain day of the week, we would wear our uniforms to school, and we had people in our school that would do that. It was terrible. And they dishonored our soldiers and dishonored America, and never understanding and realizing that those people went there to protect them. And many never came home except in a box, and were laid to rest when they got back here. I remember how it made me feel when I saw that happening, and I saw my friends that had gone and they were being disrespected, and I listened to the popular media of the day, and it would make me almost regurgitate. Went to Santa Fe Community College in 1970, right out of high school, and had professors there that were right or left-wing communists, is what I call them, and I mean hate America and downplayed America, cursed America. Everything about America was bad in their book, and I had to sit through those kind of the indoctrination of those kind of professors. And of course, they didn't like those of us that were pro-American, that loved our country and loved God, loved our families. They didn't like us. In fact, we split some classes. Some of the classes split over 3 or 4 Christians in those classes, and they had their meetings at night on their collective farms, wherever they were. Seriously, you think I'm serious? I'm dead serious about this. Some of the classes, they told us, what kind of grade do you want to make? And you write down the grade you want and don't come back. That was at Santa Fe. I'm thinking, wait a minute, I paid a lot of money for this class. Why are you not excuse me just for a minute. So why are you not teaching the class? Well, it's independent study. I remember this one literature class. Went to class, got the syllabus, and it was a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class, so this was like Monday and Wednesday, showed up for class. And he was one of the ones that said, sign up for the grades you want and don't come back. So I sit down, and one other kid comes and sits down, and we're sitting there like good little students waiting on the professor. He never shows for about 20 minutes. Finally, we see him going down the hall, and he peeks in the room, and he said, what are y'all doing here? It's class time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It's 8:30 or whatever it was. He said, you blankety blankers, cussed us out, basically. Why'd you come back? I told you to. Didn't you sign up for what grade you want? I said, yeah, but I'm not going to just take a grade without earning it. He said, I told you it was independent study. Just get out of here. I'm thinking to myself, what? What kind of insane asylum am I attending here? Calls itself a school, a college, and it's got insane asylum. I mean, it's got, the inmates are teaching. What? And I had a bunch of classes like that at Santa Fe that were like, run by people like that. And it would just my parents want me to go to college. All good kids that obey your parents want to go to college, right? parents, go get your education. I just got so disillusioned, I told my parents, I'm not going back there. They said, oh, no, you're quitting college. And I'm thinking to myself, if you just knew, Daddy, if you just knew, Mama, what they're teaching, you'd burn the place down. You wouldn't just want me to quit. You'd burn it down. So went home, got married a little while after that, started a life. Well, outside of that, because I wasn't going back to that place, I had 32 credit hours. You have one, Lee? I'd like to get one. Got a cough drop. Thank you. I think I better use a cough drop instead of a peppermint. I'll put that for later. Y'all pray for Miss Vonnie. She's got the bad croup that y'all had. I think she caught it. And I said, stay home, because we don't need more of that being passed around.